morning, everyone. It's Carrie Holmes here with Workplace Education Manitoba. Excited to work with Rochelle today and bringing you interpersonal skills. Now, before we get started, let's get all this business out of the way. Please complete your Jot Form Pre-Assessment. Okay, folks? It's listed here in the chat. And what we need from you is just to pause, take a moment, go in and complete that form. It's just a few moments, it's just a few questions, won't hurt. And at the end, we will also be doing a post-course assessment as well. That one, we will find you if you do not complete it. I promised Rochelle I wouldn't say it like that, but it just came out. What can I say? So yeah, those pre and post assessments are really important to us at Workplace Education Manitoba. It helps us to understand where we're headed, what we need to do to make things better for you, and how we can better serve you. So please click on the link, go ahead and complete that. While you're doing that, I would like to just let you know a little bit about who we are and where we're headed today. You've landed with Workplace Education Manitoba, and today's topic is interpersonal skills, one of my absolute favorites because of people, right? It doesn't matter what industry we're in, we're all working with people, whether it's in the workplace, in the home, outside of work. So these interpersonal skills that we will look at today will be of benefit to you in all aspects of your life. So just as a quick agenda, while you're completing your Jot form, we're looking at defining elements of interpersonal communication to define and identify the function of perception and self-concept. Now that is a biggie. To develop listening and feedback skills. And again, some of you have heard me speak about the ratio in our bodies, which is one mouth, one heart, 2 ears, and 2 eyes. So I think our listening skills need to be amped up a bit there. Understand tools to communicate ideas and feelings, and we're going to also develop and use interpersonal language. So all of these things coming at you today from the comfort of your own computer. Now, with Workplace Education Manitoba, we're helping people to develop essential skills that are needed for work, learning, and life. And as if you haven't heard it enough from this voice, that is the truth. All of these skills that we're looking at, they are essential for a reason. And that is so that we can use them in all aspects of living, both in and outside of the work, friends, family, all of the things. And we have listed here, and I know that you're working on your Jot form, so you might not be able to see this beautiful slide, but it's here. To look at these skills, when we consider interpersonal skills, we are hitting on so many of these, and especially oral communication, which will be a big part of our session today. Thinking skills, reading, continuous learning, document use, computer use, writing, working with others, and numeracy. So the top two for me with this topic would be working with others and the oral communication. And here we are, web address here at weminterlake.ca, coming at you from beautiful Selkirk in our new location, which will be opening soon, so stay tuned for more information on that. And of course, our other offices located throughout the province. And once you've completed your pre-assessment, if you could pop into the chat and just let us know where you're joining from. We always get excited to see where people are joining in from all over the province today. A big fat thank you to our contributors that make this training possible, which would be Employment and Social Development Canada and Manitoba Education and Training. This project was jointly funded through Human Resources Skills Development Canada and Entrepreneurship Training and Trade. And of course, for more information on that, you can head to our, what I call our mothership website, which is wem.mb.ca. Thanks everybody for popping that in there. It's so fun to see where everybody's from. Now, to introduce our host today, our instructor is Rochelle Amy. And what I love about Rochelle is that she teaches from a philosophy that a little warmth can change the world. And I'm sure that many of you have felt that and seen that throughout her sessions as you've been able to join us over the past couple of months. She believes in making sure there's a chair for everyone in the room, that we all have something unique and valuable to contribute. And that's one thing I love about Rochelle, is that she is all about allowing a voice for everyone. And we really hope that you'll feel that and use that throughout our attendee chat today. And Rochelle's amazing. She's been engaged in educational settings for over 20 years in so many different ways and capacities, and now as an essential skills instructor with Workplace Education Manitoba. And you know, you've probably felt this and seen this as well. Her connection with adult learners is incredible. She helps us to feel so smart and educated already. And she's also amazing example of continuous learning as she's chipping away on her graduate degree in leadership. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Rochelle in, fresh off of a hockey rink or a baseball diamond, I'm sure. Rochelle's a well-rounded person to bring us this topic today. So thank you, Rochelle. Thanks for being here, and we're really looking forward to this session.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Carrie, for that warm introduction. Thank you, everyone, for being here and doing those Jot forms. I know those are the technical piece to get us going, but it allows us to get our funding and be able to offer this for you. Now, do you have your speakers on, and are they loud? Tell me if they're amped up. Give me a thumbs up if your speakers are on loud, but I guess that's only relevant if you're in a workplace. Hey, you got speakers on. Because this is what I find about this particular topic. The people who sign up to engage in deeper learning about interpersonal skills probably have some interpersonal skills. And the people who don't have them don't know they don't have them. So crank up your speakers so that your colleague in the next cubicle can follow along with us today. Of course, most of us have been working from home, so that's a little unfortunate. But whether you're looking to dig into this for yourself or for information you can share with a team, the idea is that we raise our self-awareness on where we're at with our interpersonal skills in a way that can help bring others along, get them on the same ship, on the same boat, and go the same direction. And haven't you found that in your workplace, it's so easy to get the work done if it just weren't for the people? And yet, like Carrie said, we're all engaged in working with people, so that's always the complicating factor. Now, what exactly are interpersonal skills? Well, they're sometimes referred to as other things. Sometimes you've heard about, are you able to cooperate or collaborate with others? Sometimes you hear the phrases social skills or soft skills and working with others. Of course, we hear this a lot in the job interview stage. And then after that, we don't seem to use this language a whole lot. So a lot of people have a real awareness on figuring out where their interpersonal skills are before they get the job. And then when we're in it, it does take routine maintenance to make sure we're adapting and growing those skills for the environment that we're in. Now, I don't know what professions you're all in, so I'd love to see a thumbs up emoji if the work you do interacts with clients or customers, external stakeholders, and a thumbs down if the work you do really doesn't engage in a sales or public relations or customer capacity. So a thumbs up on whether you're representing your company brand, thumbs down if you're a little more isolated in the type of work you do. So we have a little bit of both here. It seems like the majority is working also with external stakeholders, which is interesting because sometimes we can let our hair down a little bit when we're only dealing with internal clients, but with external, we sort of have a little bit of a further reach. Now, the research surrounding soft skills is phenomenal. It's interesting that not only do soft skills help with mastering your job and your expertise and the particular skills that you need for your industry, but the research also indicates that it affects the overall production rate. So actual production and return on investment in training and engaging with employees can be as high as 12% when someone has really mastered their soft skills or their interpersonal skills. And organizations that don't do it or choose to turn a blind eye to it because, frankly, it's kind of tough to talk about sometimes. It gets a little confrontational in a way to have to develop people with their soft skills. The ones who ignore it, they're the ones with that big turnover rate. where they have all kinds of employees, but they come and go. There's not really retention, and they have a lot of managers or supervisors, but no one's really sure who's setting the tone and who's the actual leader. Well, what are these skills that make that difference, that really strengthen the workplace, that really strengthen and bring that 12% ROI? What are those? Well, it's really simple in the life skills that we use day to day, interacting with the people around us. And that's interacting with either a singular individual or a team or a larger group or even a populace. They're also the measures on how you are able to adapt in that interaction. So being able to handle the curveball of someone coming from a different vantage point or a different set of values, and then being able to use those problem-solving skills so that you can resolve the conflict. And conflict doesn't always present itself as an argument. Conflict could just simply mean a need is not being met. So recognizing that we have the skills to identify what need needs to be met that I'm not necessarily measuring in a specific way, and yet when I solve it, it will produce dividends for my company. Now, most of us inherit these in our nurtured environment, right? We've learned interpersonal skills by how we've interacted with family, what's happened in our school career, our work career, and our socialization with our peers. And a lot of what we've developed has happened naturally. Usually that's good. Sometimes that's not always good. And this just happened to me recently when I was with a friend and we were in a group, and I got really excited about what someone was saying, and I interrupted what she was saying to offer the thing I was so excited about. And when I saw her reaction to the interruption, it really humbled me and caught me off guard, because I realized, oh, I thought we were collaborating in this moment, and I thought we were all just like peppering ideas in. And when I took a step back, I realized I've known this individual for a long time, and I know that her family of origin is very quiet, and it's like pass the talking stick and everyone takes a turn. Whereas my family of origin is so massive that it's like you got to speak up and pepper your ideas in there or you're not going to be heard. So sometimes those skills we gain can be a little bit of a rub depending what those other skills people have. But this is really good news, because it means you have something and you've cultivated and developed something already unknowingly that you get to bring to the table. And if we can do that with a modicum of humility, it just changes the game. See, healthy communication, the biggest barrier is pride and fear. Always. We don't want to be afraid. And it's so funny because as it relates to interpersonal skills, before we came online to teach today, I had to make a phone call to this national organization that was handling a matter. So it would be sort of like calling the government or the tax agency, that sort of thing. So I call this a national organization and I say, here's a technical issue I have, and can we check the file and so on. Well, I got to use interpersonal skills this morning before I even joined you all here. Here's what I discovered. The individual on the other end of the phone, they had a much different need than I had. Their need was to make sure the phone call happened very quickly and to just have it end. My need was to make sure the problem got solved. And so the way we communicated with each other was interesting. And in the end, I actually asked them, I don't usually do this, but I actually asked them, I said, it sounds to me like maybe you lost the file, and can you assure me that it's been found now, so when I call in, it's there? Like, what's my assurance that the next time I call this won't happen? And they just could not admit that they had lost it. And so we wasted so much time trying to build trust because of that defensiveness that they felt. So really, when we're looking at our interpersonal skills, what's wrong with someone else, and it's so much harder for me to tell you what's wrong with me, like interrupting my friend. and yet that humility to lay down our defensiveness is really what builds the bridge and opens the door. Now, we love the emojis and interactions, so I just need a witness. If you've ever been, the interrupter or the foot in the mouth person where you stepped on someone else's interpersonal space, can I just have a shared emoji? Can we just commiserate with each other? Someone else did that out there? Oh, and I won't ask for the emoji of if I've done this to you specifically. I've had enough for one day. No. One of the pieces is really the active listening, right? Have we heard what's been said? And have we worked on our perception to understand what isn't actually being said, but what is being attempted to be communicated? Because the good news is we can become aware of our behaviors. We can become aware of our attitudes and understand, hey, when I do this, here's the impact that it has on the individual or the team, or sometimes even the brand of what we're supposed to be representing. And we can take those cues and we can look at our behaviors and actually not only monitor them, but modify them. And so this part of the reflection, we talked about that we would do a little bit of self-awareness on where we're at with our interpersonal skills. And if you're working along in our workbook, there's a place to jot this out too, where we can ask ourselves, do I actually work well with others? Now, others is a pretty broad word, right? Others is everyone around the globe. So let's pull that down into the funnel. How about in my current workplace? How do I do playing in the sandbox with the people that I've been stuck in the sandbox with? And then what are the consequences if that doesn't work so well, be it me or someone else on the team? What are the consequences that can happen when the interpersonal thing's a little off? And I want to throw that out to you to just put that up in the chat box for me. When our interpersonal skills are a little weak as a team, what are some of those consequences that happen? What happens in the workplace? What happens to the brand? What happens to the customer? The consequences are so interesting because usually the bigger consequence, we don't see it right away. We can't measure it right away until the person's walked away usually. A communication breakdown is so huge. And Terry, to recover from that, if you've noted that, that recovering from a communication breakdown can cost so much and needs not being met, absolutely. And when that translates into sales and clients and those types of relationship, those needs going unmet actually will, in the end, not meet your own needs because your company's profitability won't be there. But of course, the flip side to that coin is that there's benefits, right? There's benefits of working well with others. And often, I guess it's just worth saying, some of those benefits you do get to feel, but most of those benefits your company gets to reap the dividend on. So often we're doing this pouring out and we're doing this investment and we're doing everything we can with our interpersonal skills. And we leave a little depleted because we've given our all, and who got to really benefit is the company. So I just throw that out there as a little bit of awareness, because sometimes we're looking for that validation that there's something reciprocal happening, but it doesn't usually happen in a direct exchange. It's usually a little bit more of a ripple effect down the road. Now, when we want to evaluate ourselves and have that awareness, hey, what really do I have in my toolbox with interpersonal skills, we should be mindful of these background pieces that we bring, right? What's my personality? Am I super outgoing, or am I really hard to pull a word out of? What's my cultural background, my age, my gender, all those pieces? Age is an interesting one, because I know when I'm out with my teenage son, he might approach a worker to ask for something, and when I come up and join him, they all of a sudden light up and treat him really nice when this old person's with him. It's really interesting how age can affect the relationship you have with different salespeople and so on. So taking these into account, that you've come from a vantage point and a background that maybe not everyone else has come from. And there's a phrase that's pretty much banned in the workplace now of common sense, right? It's not actually common because we've come from such diverse backgrounds. And when we get a grasp of this, it means that we can actually extend a measure of grace and cooperation to the people we work with, understanding what they bring and their vantage point is something valuable that we can learn from, and then it changes our expectations, right? How many have been burned by expectations? Like, you know, a thumbs up if your expectation on what the other person's skills should be giving you just weren't met, right? Like, we have expectations. And I know I feel this when I think about different colleagues, right? If, you know, I had a really, really great administrative assistant, and then when you have one who's really not so great, it's hard not to compare them. And so it's just understanding that the expectations change when we understand the different skills that people bring to the table, and we boost them up in their place of skill. We boost them up in their place of strength instead of just wasting our time only shoring up weaknesses. Why should we even bother? This takes so much time, it takes so much energy. Well, we had a little moment to brainstorm some of the dividends, and really these are what they are. The impact on the culture and the stress level, and whether or not people want to invest, right? How many of you have gladly stayed late for a boss because you loved working for that boss? I would love to see if there's an emoji out there for anyone who's been so dedicated to their supervisor that you've given up a lunch break, or you stayed late, or you changed your holidays, you did something because you just really loved working for that person and you wanted your team to succeed. Well, I could easily give an emoji for this because I believe in so many of the people I've worked for that I'll often make a sacrifice because I want them to succeed. And it's just such an awesome, awesome impact on the team culture when you realize you're willing to cover for each other and help each other out. So those benefits of the resolved conflict, and when you've got the clear communication and when everyone's on the same page of what's expected with the interpersonal skills, you just don't waste time with all the problem solving that could come from that. But of course, with any bumping into other people, there's problems, there's barriers, there's hurdles. The people are different from us, and we have to figure out how to communicate with them. And so we'll just very briefly touch on the barriers, but it is something that you can jot about in your workbook. If you've printed that out, go ahead and fill that in, because some of the most common interpersonal barriers are, of course, the not listening, right? Maybe I need to just say something and demand answers from you, but I'm not going to hear the answer. I just want you to hear all of the demands that I have. Of course, those biases, right? The ones that just come with us naturally from our background and our perspectives, but we work to overcome those and make room for everybody in the conversation. And then, of course, being totally one-sided. But probably the best is this one, the lack of empathy. Now, some days you just wake up with a lack of empathy, right? Some days you want to tell everyone you meet, this is not the day to mess with me, just not today. And probably of all the barriers, this is the biggest, because we can't necessarily see what someone else is going through. And you know, my kids are pretty involved in sports, and there was one year that one of the coaches was just really having a hard time, and none of us knew what was going on, but he turned from Mr. Nice Guy to Mr. like Screamy Pants. Hey, that's a good one. Write down Screamy Pants in your workbook. Well, Mr. Screamy Pants, we just had patience. We thought, we don't know what's going on. This is his new coaching technique. He used to be Mr. Nice Guy. I don't know what's happening. And then, you know, several months into the season, in fact, I think the season was ending, he finally confided in us that no one knew he had just, at the start of the hockey season, just been left by his wife and was going through a really messy separation and divorce. And man, it just changes the perspective on how to communicate with that person, right? Because you realize every time they show up at the rink, they're already stressed out, they've already been pecked at, they're already worn down. So a little bit of empathy goes a long, long way, whether that's a coworker or even a customer. And when we can really beef up these interpersonal skills and have the self-awareness to change and to strengthen them as the years go by, it really boosts the productivity and the collaboration. Sometimes when we talk about collaboration, we picture a team meeting and everybody talking and interacting together. But often collaboration happens completely in isolation. Sometimes your best way to collaborate is alone, thinking about what skills do I bring to the table that can strengthen this project or lighten that person's load, or if I do this or send this email or make this demand or ask for this, what's the impact going to be on the other person? And what's the impact to the morale going to be to the team? So I want to encourage you to think about those independent moments when you're writing your to-do list, when you're sending emails and asking for things to do. Recognize what you do in isolation is almost always a bigger part of the team, and those independent activities can be done with great interpersonal skills factored in. That whole concept of cooperation and collaborating teams, it touches on behaviors, attitudes, and habits. And attitudes can come and go. Your attitude could change with the weather. But when we create good habits of what we're going to do and what we expect of ourselves, we recognize there's a little bit of a checklist. What do I expect for myself? What do I expect on how I treat others? What are my expectations of my team and myself, and are they reasonable? Am I working with honesty and integrity? Can people count on me? And then what am I projecting based on who I am and what I'm putting out there? What am I offering in my interpersonal skills to the people around me? Because haven't you worked with someone who's really got interpersonal skills? They've really got it. They've got the warmth, they've got the working with others, they've got the communication, they know how to get things done, they know how to motivate the team. Well, they're usually successful in their career. And it's so unfortunate because of everything. I feel like this is the one, if you work with someone to prep you for an interview, they focus totally on your interpersonal skills. They get you to sell yourself on how you work with others. That's how you prepare for the interview. And then when you get the job, the company sometimes spends zero time working on interpersonal stuff. And they're just focused on all the policies and the procedures and the technicalities. And the thing is, folks, how many of you are not as young as you were 10 years ago? Is there anyone out there like me where you've aged? You're 10 years older now than you were 10 years ago? I think we have that in common. And so our needs, our careers, our personalities, our energy levels, those change through the years. And so we can't just sort of check this off that we've done it and it's gone. But it's really a continuous learning piece for all of us, no matter what kind of team that we're on. It's in fact, of course, like I referred to, what the employers are looking for at the very first meeting, because they know that customers and clients really want those skills. And if you really reflect, think about what's the easiest to you. What comes easy? What can you do? How do you react with people? How do you communicate with people? Those easy things that come natural to you, those are the skills you already have. And the ones where you're reaching a little further and faking it a little more, those are the ones that are yet to be developed. And recognizing that you're not just doing this for your paycheck, but the dividends are huge in your personal life, your social life, your volunteer life, your work life. How many of you wear more than one hat? You're not just who you are at work, right? We're wearing like 17 hats of who we are. And these skills affect all of those relationships. So taking a moment with that workbook, I'm going to go quiet here for a moment because I want you to read through the questions in the notebook. Now, some of you maybe didn't get a chance to print it off, so I'm going to show you what they are here. And I just want you to take a second to just reflect for a moment and see, how would you answer these, with a yes, with a no, or with a sometimes? Just take a little glance through this list. Now, I have a sense that there's probably no one who was able to say no to all of these things, right? There's probably something on that list that touched a nerve in us, right? I look at the example of being frightened or stressed in the company of an angry person. And so you might be, well, that doesn't scare me if someone's angry. Well, no, but does it raise your blood pressure? Does it irritate you? So do you have these visceral reactions that happen with different situations? And if you answered yes to any of these, that occasionally, sometimes, some of these things apply, could you show me just with your emoji that we could relate, that maybe you had one of these where you're like, oh yeah, I tend to downplay my accomplishments, or I tend to take on the responsibility for everyone else at my own expense and have a hard time maybe dealing with different feelings and emotions. Thank you for being brave. Those of you who are willing to say, hey, guess what? I'm not perfect. Because I hope you signed up today because you're not perfect. Of course, your volume might be up so that everyone else in the office can hear, and maybe they should see this self-assessment screen. Well, good news, that's in your workbook, so you can share that with others. And the pieces about this are to recognize that it helps us understand why we get so button pushed. I hate using the word triggered. But why does our button get pushed with different scenarios? And when we understand, oh, hey, it's that issue in my life that I'm working on, that's why. So I won't react quite so much. And on this piece of the self-awareness, one thing I really encourage you to do, and it does take time to write this down. So write this out in your workbook, is, do you have any deal breaker? You know, there's sometimes where people have this unknowing deal breaker where it's like, I'm just not going to use the digital calendar. It doesn't work for me. I don't want to be on the company's digital calendar. I'm still going to have my paper notebook, and I love my paper agenda. I swear by it. I love it. I keep it with me all the time. I love it. And you know, I was in one workplace where I was very casually employed, and they wanted me to use the company calendar, which meant I got notifications all day long for things when I wasn't even at work for 3 days of a week. And so I had a deal breaker where I had to say, I actually can't join your calendar. That's a deal breaker for me, because every single day it's stressing me out and putting me on edge with everybody. Now that's just a really non-personal type of example where that didn't touch on all kinds of feelings and backgrounds for me, but recognizing too, what are your relational deal breakers, and do your teammates have them? If you have a stressed out single mom who can barely get to work on time, are you enacting a deal breaker by always starting your meeting at 8:30? Could you start it at 8:45 so she could just calm down for a little bit before the meeting started? So recognizing that when we're as a group, sometimes what makes the most sense to us and the most ease to us can have that little bit of a blind spot for what works for everybody else. Now this takes us into talking a little bit about communication styles. We do touch on this in an effective communication workshop. So if you've taken that workshop with us, you've seen these, they've been adapted a little, but you've seen these. The reason we want to talk about these with interpersonal skills is because there are some soft skills that are universal. Let's say speaking in a kind voice. That's universal. No matter what communication style you have, you could speak in a kind voice and treat others with respect. That's universal. But what does the respect really look like when you're working with a team? That's not universal. What I think is respectful behavior, because of the way I learn and communicate, is not going to be the same as the way you learn and communicate. So do you know your learning or communication style? Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if we have 4 of them and you feel already like, I know exactly what mine is. I'm zoned in on the type of communication I want. So give me a thumbs up if you're like, boom, I know it. Thumbs down if you're like, I do want to poke at this a little more and figure out what my style is. It's so, so important. And I'm so glad you guys are willing to poke at this and dig in. I worked with one team. I was an intern in my college years. And one of my most favorite jobs I ever had was with a team who did this. We did these hugely intense personality assessments that worked out this, I'm talking like a 30-page document on who you are and how you're wired, and then how your teammates are wired, so that you knew in a meeting, in a proposal, in day-to-day interaction, hey, when you're interacting with that person, here's what shows them respect, here's what motivates them, here's how you can collaborate with them. So knowing this for yourself is the first piece, but keep in the back of your mind, we're also going to think about who are my colleagues and what are their styles. How does my supervisor do this? How does my coworker who I interact with the most every day, what's their communication style? Are they visual? Are they auditory? Are they kinesthetic? Or are they digital? What is their learning style? This quote by Stephen Covey, I absolutely love. We think sometimes that treating everybody the same means treating them the same. But sometimes treating everyone with the same amount of respect means adapting our communication style in a way that we know the person could hear it. So treat everyone the same or with the same amount of respect and collegiality by really treating them differently. So let's look at the first one, the visual communicator. This is the person who sees the big picture, the broad strokes. They love to do the type of collaboration where they're like, can you see it? Can you visualize it? And the things that they need to really succeed in the workplace is sometimes a little bit of space and autonomy. Sometimes they need to be able to do the broad strokes and not have to quickly deal with, well, how's the budget going to accommodate that? Or who's going to do that? And breaking it down into the 20 steps. That visionary person isn't the one to get bogged down in the minutia. Now, I just want to say I'm going to roll through these 4 quickly, but in your workbook, you get a whole page on each one, and you'll have a little bit more time to figure out and jot the names on those papers, like, oh, hey, supervisor's more like this, colleagues more like this, my service team, I have a couple of these, and it's interesting. You can see right away how people learn and communicate. We almost all work with auditory communicators. And so these are the ones who learn by listening and also by speaking. They want to work it out. And what does that sound like? What does that look like? Let me zone in on that. Are you hearing me? These are the ones who do want to be drawn out. They're not always outgoing people, but they do want to be excavated from. They want you to mine the gold that's in them, on recognizing that when they can give it back to you, there's a shared understanding. And so for the ones we work with who are auditory communicators, they can often disappear out of the company and just go their own way when they feel like they're not being heard. And that can be oral, but you can also provide a lot of opportunities for people like this to be able to give their ideas in writing and in other ways that don't necessarily add up to more meeting hours, because we all want to run away from too many meetings, right? We work with kinesthetic communicators. They need to touch and do and feel it and try it out. And sometimes if they're working with the type of work that doesn't get touched, like let's say you have a kinesthetic communicator who is your accountant. Well, they're not going to take Play-Doh and make number shapes out of Play-Doh so that they can touch something and feel it, but they might need to walk around when you're in a meeting. They might need to stand up and touch the chair. They might need to touch their pen or sometimes do something that's physical. We see this sometimes if you're this type of learner. You're the one who needs to take that bathroom break from an intense boardroom meeting and go walk to the furthest bathroom and up the flight of stairs and get moving so that you can come back and get your focus on what you're doing. Although most of us want to die in too long of a meeting, that's particularly true of kinesthetic learners. And then digital communicators. These methodical ones that you work with, and these are the people who I admire, because this is not me, but these are the ones who love the details. They love the minutia, because when they can sort it out and create a pathway and a flow chart and get all the details jotted down, they have total peace of mind because they can see the logic and the rationale on why you're doing something. So out of those 4 different types of communication styles that we have, am I mindful of what mine is? Because if I don't know what mine is, I might be forcing everybody else to abandon theirs and just act the way I want them to act around me. If you're a leader, if you're a supervisor, if you have a team, I want you to especially pay attention to this, because leaders can get a little bit lazy sometimes and expect everybody to just adapt to their style. And sometimes they think it's about the job and the production, but other times it's just sort of a laziness to expect people to adapt to the way they communicate. Of course, it's your right and privilege, but it's just sort of a red light. If you're promoted into a new position, make sure you're mindful of who are those people around me? What are their learning styles? Because I might be able to not only give them respect, but get new ideas if I can engage with them in the way that their learning style is. So something I want you to do after we depart, if you could even just spend 5 minutes doing this when this webinar ends and your screen goes black, if you look in that workbook and do the challenge, there's outlined there about you, your supervisor, your coworkers, and guess what those learning styles are. It would be so fascinating for you to see why certain projects work really well with your team. Now, give me a thumbs up if you know what the golden rule is. Have you heard of the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Remember the old golden rule? We've heard of that. Well, did you know there's a platinum rule? Give me a thumbs up if you know the platinum rule. There's a platinum rule in business, and it's an author named Dave Kirpin who came up with this. And he says, actually, in business, the golden rule doesn't apply. The platinum rule applies. And it's really do unto others as they would want done unto them. And that's really one of the keys to teamwork. In fact, his book is called The Art of People, and it sure makes sense when we think of it in that way. Because when we shore up our skills in knowing our communication styles and then being able to reach out with them to other learning styles, we can adapt and relate better. It wouldn't matter what learning style we had if we were a total jerk, right? So even if everyone on our team has the same learning style, being constructive in our relationships and watching our tone of voice and even some of the choice words, that's a critical piece that just can't be forgotten. So when we talk about this whole thing of soft skills and how to get you into that role where you're the coworker that everyone wants on their team, you probably already are, quite frankly, because you signed up for this workshop. So here's a couple more that you can just add into your toolbox. Smiling is a thing. I'm sorry to say it's a thing. Even if you're in a super serious job, smiling is a thing. And it really gives people an invitation to be open, to let them know they're welcome here. They're welcome with their ideas, their needs, whatever they have. And if you have a job where you work a lot by email or telephone, give me a thumbs up if you do a lot of digital communication. Are you on the phone a lot? Are you doing emails a lot? Anything that's like writing and you're not face-to-face with people? Okay, so try this. Smile when you're on the phone. Smile while you're doing it, and partway through your conversation, smile. You'll hear it changes the tone of your voice. It's phenomenal. You can tell when someone's smiling or not. And also when you're writing those emails and policies, I don't know, there's a whole research thing on why it works. I'm just telling you, it does work. Simple gestures are huge. Having the mannerisms and the body language and the respect to be able to say, I hear you. And I just want to point out, sometimes this is also posturing. There's a lot of times when if you took the position to sit down, you would send an encouraging and inviting message for others. Is there a whole realm of communication going on beyond what's actually being said? Do you know how to read the environment? Do you know how to read the words that aren't being said, or sorry, the message that's not being said in the words, to really dig in on what the motivations and the intents and the needs truly are? And are you brave enough to get involved in reducing conflicts and to create a positive change? See, if you walked into the middle of a conflict with a smile on your face, not a sassy smile, but just an open personality smile, so much can change when we recognize it's not all bad. There's a way through. We can bring our way through this. We have an ability to do that. And then bringing people together by just sharing our similarities and sharing our differences. How many love an empathetic learner in customer service, right? Or an empathetic listener in customer service? It makes a difference. When we ask for suggestions, even from the place of conflict or from colleagues, maybe there's someone who's better in sales than you are. Maybe there's a certain demographic, let's say like this teenager, where just imagine you work in a retail environment and your colleague can sell to all the 16-year-olds and you can't. Why is that? Talk about that. Get the constructive criticism. Find out what they have and then offer and share that with each other. I think this is my #1 goal in life, is to be teachable. I have like such a long bucket list of the things I want to learn that I'm thinking I'm going to be that lady in her 90s that's like signing up for classes and people are like, why are you doing this? And it's just the whole concept of staying teachable actually keeps you humble. You don't know what you don't know. So the more you learn, the more you expand your sphere on what it is people are coming with and what they can contribute and offer. Being teachable really opens up a relational door. And then being the one who can provide a safe haven. When someone has concerns, there's no retaliation from you, and so on. Another little tip and trick is, do you practice this in front of a mirror? It's so hard to talk to yourself in front of a mirror, but do any of you do this? Give me a thumbs up if you've ever done this. You got to be brave and tell me if you've ever done this. Have you spoken in front of a mirror? So if you, let's say you have to fire someone, have you done that in front of a mirror? Let's say you've got to practice a job interview question. Have you done that in front of a mirror? What does your face look like? What does your body language do when you have to talk about a particular topic, the hard topic that no one wants to talk about? We didn't meet our sales quota and someone's getting laid off. Talk about that in front of the mirror. Thank you for those of you who said you've done this and given me the emojis, because this is a skill. I think we do this when we're mad, right? Don't we vent in front of a mirror when we didn't say what we wanted to say to the person? And then we go off by ourselves and we're driving in our car and we're just venting. That's often what we're doing, right? We're practicing our soft skills of what we would have said or what we wished we would have said. But if we can do that in advance and not just about conflict, but about other things, practicing our smiles and our resting faces in front of a mirror so we know what it is we're communicating. And finding those people in the workplace, or sometimes it's more appropriate to find them out of the workplace, is knowing who's the one I can vent with and where can I use humor. Because these outlets to be able to use emotion in a positive way is a really critical piece. And if be cautious about your venting. Be cautious about your humor. I use humor a lot with customers in one of the roles I do, and I would say 95% of the time it works, but 5% of the time humor really doesn't work. So it's also knowing where does it work in this relationship, and sometimes that can't be in the workplace. Sometimes the venting and the emotional recharging happens outside of the workplace. Whenever we're using our skills, we're impacting the one, the few, and the many. Getting to the place of productivity and being effective is just a day-to-day, year-to-year, month-to-month. Like, this is a skill that goes on forever. And so when we're talking about motivating ourselves and others, I have some questions for you. What's a time that you successfully led a team through a really sticky situation? How do you cope when you have too much on your plate? How do you walk someone through a really complex topic that they know absolutely nothing about? How do you manage when things don't go according to plan? And how do you cope? These are some questions that, as we dig into what are my soft skills when I'm going through big things, complex things, what skills come up? And what do I expect in others in those moments? LinkedIn released part of their findings on what employers were looking for. And employers had this long list of 10 things that they were looking for in soft skills or interpersonal skills. And you'll notice that most of them involve bumping into other people. Almost everything involves how you'll interact with other people at the end of the day. And so let's never underestimate collaboration and how our interpersonal skills are really the thing that bump into other people. You've been on bumper cars at the fair, right? Will we ever have fairs again? I hope we do. But you've been on bumper cars, and interpersonal skills can feel a lot like a bumper car when someone doesn't have them and when they haven't practiced soft skills. Because even the hard things that need to be said can be said in a way of dignity and respect. And really, the goal should always be resolution, right? So let's remember that. One of my college professors said this, I've never forgotten it. He said, the goal of confrontation is always restoration. So if you're going to go into a conflict or into a teaching moment or into talking about a complex issue, if you keep the goal being to restore that person to the right place or the right relationship, you're not going to destroy them in how you act with your interpersonal skills or your soft skills. And there's so much compromise in this, right? There's a place where we sometimes feel like we're giving in, but giving in isn't the same as giving up. Sometimes it's a little bit of a dance. You take like the two-step, you take 2 steps forward and you take 1 step back. And so sometimes there's a little bit of a dance when we're dealing with what everybody's interpersonal skills look like and how we can build trust on our teams. I want to continue. I have another point I want to cover about how to measure when people are engaged or not. And so we want to go there, but first I invite Carrie to pop on back with us because she has another little survey for you to do. And you're going to love doing it because it doesn't cost you anything but about 30 seconds of your time. So Carrie, walk us through that.
Thank you so much, Rochelle, for this so far. It's been quite fascinating. And as many of you know, this is a topic that I love so, so much. And like Rochelle said, we can really learn a lot from each other, but also from just being the way that we interact. And I love that last quote that you shared. Now, I know you guys have been waiting for this, and for whatever reason, my copy and paste is not working, but that is okay because we are professionals and we can do all of the things all of the time. So please stand by while I just try to get this guy to re-rig.
I popped it up in the chat for you, Carrie.
Oh my gosh, see, why am I even here?
They click on that, it'll open in a new tab. So go ahead and fill that in.
Thanks, everybody. If you could just talk. It's just a few questions, and like we said, it's so important to us and the work that we do. It's how we continue to bring you amazing instructors like Rochelle. So thank you.
So how about a thumbs up if you feel like you've completed that already and that tab is done for you?
And even feel free just to let us know in the chat if you just can put a yes, I'm done. That would be great. Either one, we'll take it. 500 points.
Oh, 1,000 points to Julie there. Right on.
Well, everybody that finishes is going to get an air high five. Is that? That's a good one,
and
right?
10,000 points will be, what's that talk show where the points mean nothing and everything's made up?
I believe it's Training Tuesdays.
There we go. Thanks, guys. Feel free to still chip away on those. I'm curious about something from you. Sometimes we can think of someone's lack of interpersonal skills a little more easily than we can think of their strengths, right? So leave your coworker anonymous. I do not want any names. If you show a name, you're going to lose your 500 points that you just got for doing that form. So tell me in the chat box area, what are some of the interpersonal skills you see lacking in some of your teammates? So don't say them by name, but what are some of those skills? Is it the communication? Is it the listening? Is it the warmth? Is it the smiling? Is it not knowing learning styles? Tell us in the chat some of those more pet peeve soft skills that you think might be missing from some of your teammates. And I'm going to start you out because the one on the phone call today was pride, which probably was actually more about fear. I think they just didn't want to admit they had lost my file, but sometimes that manifests in a real defensiveness when the person's communicating. So that would be one of the things I would hone in on as a pet peeve thing. Do you have any? Carrie, tell us your pet peeve about me. Put that in the chat. Ha, right, sure. I didn't pay her to say these nice things, you guys. Yeah, that whole entitlement on their opinion, right? And the lack of time to engage and oh, totally. And just treating you like you're invisible, right, Beth? Like none of us want to feel invisible. That's one of my big pet peeves. Thank you for saying that. Well, it's so interesting because sometimes people are doing that and they're not actually watching you to know whether you're engaged or not. And so my challenge to you is to think about when you're engaging with others, are there cues that are happening to clue you in that maybe you don't have the person's interest or engagement? So if you had their attention, they're probably giving you back some nodding, some verbal engagement. They're probably looking at you. Usually you have the attention of the eye contact and the face-to-face. Often a leaning in and an active listening's happening. And sometimes they'll even repeat to you in a rephrasing of what they think they've heard. If that interest is starting to wander, maybe you're losing the eye contact, maybe you're losing the body and the face is starting to turn away or they're looking down or whatever. Maybe you're seeing a harsher look on their face. Now that one's tricky because I know my resting face is not very smiley. It can look really mad. So I've had people I know tell me they waved at me driving by me. I didn't even look in the car. I had no idea someone I knew drove by. But I guess my resting face looked mad. I looked all serious when I was driving. So if I've ever given you my resting face, I'm sorry. So that's a tricky one, but I think it can become more exaggerated when you find you're losing someone's attention. And then really those signs on whether they're uncomfortable or not. This is kind of key in our workplace, especially because we're living in such a cancel culture world right now. Sometimes the onus is on us to watch for some of the uncomfortability that others are feeling. So when that body language really shifts and it really changes, there's some cues there about whether they're engaged, disengaged, or actually uncomfortable in what we're presenting with them. But what's the flip side of this? When we do know we're communicating and our colleague has great interpersonal skills, what does that look like? Who's the colleague you love working with? Tell me why. What is it that they do that you love working with them? I'm going to start it out and tell you about one of my colleagues. She's a former colleague. Her name is Chantel, and she is Miss Follow-Up. She's got all the details, and she always checks in on following up and details. And I feel like sometimes I don't even remember I told her something, and she remembers. She just is so engaged with the people she works with that she's not forgetting what she's learned from you or committed to do with you. She's got it written down somewhere. So I love her detail-oriented focus, and she always follows up and makes a personal connection, even in addition to emails. What are some of the ones you feel? I know Carrie mentions ease in communication. Carrie, you probably get that because you give that. You're really, really good at that. She's skilled at just taking people in. If you've sat in her workshops, she often calls people friend, and she knows how to really open the door to communication. Oh, and colleagues that check in and actually care. They have empathy. They know you're a human being. It's so amazing. The colleagues who know, and don't you feel like you're making a difference then, right? And so those interpersonal skills that you're feeling from those colleagues that are easy to talk to and who know you exist and treat you with respect, the skills you're feeling are really those eye contact, body language, intentional communication, and positive communication. I bet, Beth, that they're probably even smiling when they're talking to you, right? So knowing that, oh, Terry, I love it. Knowing that a colleague has your back, that is absolutely huge. We have that at Workplace Education Manitoba, and it's one of the reasons I love working here, because we have each other's back. We don't want anyone feeling abandoned or exposed, but we want to really help each other, and it's just such a beautiful thing when you have colleagues like that. Treasure the ones that you have. And this is your takeaway that you can take. Carrie, maybe you can just refresh in the chat box the link for that workbook for today, the Interpersonal Skills Workbook, the PDF, just so it's fresh for us all here, because this is what I want you to take away. In the workbook, there is a place for you to do a self-assessment quiz. So there's an online link where you can evaluate who am I, how do I score in this, or whatever, and you can see you might be a 9 out of 10 on almost everything. Well, hey, be a 10 out of 10. Why not increase those strengths? And then there's also a place in your workbook for you to do an activity with a partner. And there's a whole checklist on how to rate each other on communication skills. Do that with someone you trust. Do that with someone you like, because then you know they'll be honest with you. Someone who's not just an enemy to everything you do in the workplace. So those are some homework pieces you could take away, and even do them with a team. Have a team meeting and do those assessments together. It's so empowering. And then I just want to thank you all for being with us today. And Carrie's going to join us too, because she understands a little more about what happens from here. And I think follow-up phone call happens and so on. And I want to thank you for gathering. I do truly recognize that most people who sign up for interpersonal skills are really great learners. You are engaging in lifelong learning, and you deserve a pat on the back. I wish I got to know you personally so I could just dig in to your story and hear it. So thanks for making a difference in your workplace and bringing your skills to the table. And I'll turn it over to Carrie.
Thanks again, Rochelle. This has been amazing. Please, everybody, if you haven't taken the moment, even though we provided it to you, passive-aggressive communication, if you can go ahead and pop in and do that Jot. And again, use this workbook that Rochelle has pulled together as a resource. Hold it, love it, refer back to it. We're so thankful for you for joining us today, and Rochelle for your amazing insights and stories, helping us to link this real life stuff into our own real lives. So thank you, everybody. Go forth and have an amazing day.